Hello, everyone, and welcome to Biohackers Lab. I'm your host, Gary Coben, and on today's episode, I have Camille Herron. Camille is an endurance athlete who is the ladies winner of the 2017 Comrades Marathon. She's a three-time Olympic marathon trails qualifier, 20-time marathon winner, a world 50K and 100K champion. She holds the world best time for the 50 miles, and that's not all. She's also a research assistant in osteoimmunology at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. Camille, thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about a lot with you.
Yeah, we got so much to talk about because when we were communicating earlier, we found out you are a biohacker and you didn't even realize it.
That's right. I had no idea that what I've been doing. I always joke that I was like a modern day Lydiard or something, like doing experiments with myself with training and everything else. So yeah, this is cool. I'm a biohacker.
You are officially. I mean, when I got to read a bit of background about you, the amount of experiments that you've done on yourself to optimize your body to be able to do what you do,
Yep.
yeah, it's fascinating. And I mean, we're going to get into it, and especially bone health today. So if anyone's interested in bone health, you are the perfect example today that we're going to be explaining about. So I think if we could start, let's go back to why you do what you do, and specifically how you got to the stage where you're now an elite athlete, where you've won these high prestigious marathon events around the world.
Yeah, so as far as my running career and how I became a biohacker, I had a lot of stress fractures when I was young, and I had grown about 9 inches when I was in high school. So my dad played basketball at Oklahoma State, so I'm pretty tall. I'm 5'9". Well, you guys probably go by centimeters and meters, so I'm not really sure what that equates to, but yeah, I'm pretty tall and I'm really long and lanky, and so I grew a lot when I was in high school. And at the time I was training, at a pretty decent level, and I started having all these stress fractures after I grew really fast. And I had three in my left foot, and they put me in orthotics, and I was not doing. I mean, I guess it helped my foot, but then I kept having stress fractures up in my femurs. And so I ended up making a comeback my senior year of high school, and I ended up getting recruited by University of Tulsa. And so I went to Tulsa on athletic and academic scholarships, and I kept getting stress fractures my freshman year. And my training volume had jumped up really high from high school to college. And so obviously I was under a lot more stress. And I basically got a medical hardship after that. And I just became a recreational runner. And so I started focusing more on my academics, and I got really interested in research and bone health. And, at the time, I really just wanted to be able to run consistently and not, keep having stress fractures. And so, in the meantime, I also met my husband, my husband's actually Irish. So, he's a professional athlete, and he was training for the marathon, and he had gotten his U.S. citizenship. And so he was training to qualify for the Olympic marathon trials. And so I was trying to just help him with his own running career. And, I was very studious, and I was just running for fun. And I started doing research as an undergrad. And, the way my mind started thinking, I was trying to think about, what I was doing in the lab, and how to apply that with myself and understand bone and muscle health. And so yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool that, I didn't realize at the time, I don't know if the word biohacker even existed, but yeah, I was really curious on how to keep myself healthy. And so what I basically came to the conclusion about was that my feet, I had read about the Kenyans growing up training barefoot, and I was like, yeah, that really makes sense. I'm got my degree in exercise and sports science, and the thought is, with strength training, that you put your body under a stress, and then it adapts and it gets stronger. And so I kind of was thinking about that, with the Kenyans training barefoot and with my own feet. And I just had this moment where I was like, I think I really want to like try that with my own feet, and see if I can make my feet stronger and if that would, have an impact on my whole body and, the mechanics of my whole body. And so I think as I told you, my first time, this is back in like December 2003. So this is before it was cool to run barefoot and minimalist shoes. And I'm taking my physics and biomechanics classes and I'm thinking about this. And so I started training in my slippers, like my house slippers. I like went outside and like was running around the block in house slippers uh, and so that was kind of the turning point for me. Like, okay, like I'm trying this in house slippers. Maybe I was a really big fan of Bill Rogers. So, all the old school marathoners training in these, pretty basic shoes and so it just dawned on me that, we've got all these fancy shoes now. Maybe I need to go back to like what Bill Rogers was training in. And so I ended up buying some retro tennis shoes online and that was pretty much it. Like I started training in those and, within I was very sore at first. When you run in less cushioned shoes and you ditch orthotics, you're pretty sore. And so I was sore for about 3 months. And then it was like my body adapted and got used to that stress. And then within 7 months, I had gotten up to like 70 miles per week. And I felt good. I was healthy. And one thing that I don't normally talk about, and when I tell this story is, my body composition changed. Like once I got training consistently, I started sleeping better. I was eating better. I was like just taking better care of myself as a college student. And so, yeah, it was like really incredible.
So why do you think your body composition changed when you went more barefoot running or minimalist shoe running? What was
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I think like because I never really trained consistently. Like I would, train for only maybe a couple months, and then something would pop up, like my IT band would get irritated, or something would get sore, and then I would just stop running for a period. And so it was pretty incredible because once I got to training consistently and I realized I could run more mileage and feel good. And it's really cool as an exercise science major, I was in classes where I could get my body composition tested. And so my body composition over like a 2-year period or something like that went from like 20% body fat down to like 12.5%
Wow.
body fat. So, and yeah, and I mean, it was just a matter of like figuring out how to make my body be more balanced, basically, and it started with my feet and what I was doing with my feet. And so anyway, so the summer 2004 was my husband. He had made the Olympic marathon trials in 2004, and we went up to Boulder, Colorado, and so I'm just kind of like tagging along. I was not the serious athlete at the time. It was my husband. And, we're around all these other Olympic athletes up in Boulder who are training for the Olympics. And one day we went out for a run together, and my husband realized that I was running further than him. And I didn't get back in the door until after him. And he got really curious about how much I was running. And, as a recreational runner at the time, like I'm running like 6 days a week for 70 miles per week. And he was like, wow, that's quite a bit. Like, holy cow, he's like, he just couldn't believe it that I was running that much. And so then, yeah, he started giving me workouts and then, within a couple months, like I had went out and ran like 2 minutes faster for 5K and ran my first 10K in 36 minutes and my first 15K. So yeah, my running career just took off. And it all started with my feet, basically.
Yeah, that's incredible. And we'll get into your current achievements in a bit, where you've you've broken records and you're in this ultramarathon world now. But I am fascinated how you started with not shin splints here, but with stress fractures. What if you could explain to someone what does that feel like to have a stress fracture?
Oh, yeah. Well, so I obviously, professionally study bone now, and it's really cool that I know what a stress fracture is, and I know what it feels like, and I know how the process of how the body remodels itself. But yeah, I mean, a stress fracture is a really sharp pain. And the thing is, our bones are always in a state of remodeling themselves, so they're always being broken down and rebuilt back up. And I mean, there's times when I'm training even now that I might get that very distinct sharp pain, and I know now that I have to back off, or I have to change how the stress is distributed. Maybe train in a different pair of shoes for a couple of days or something like that, or train on a different surface, or maybe take a day off or something like that. So I understand now that that very distinct sharp pain that you get, I know what it is, and I know how to treat it quickly to prevent it from becoming a stress fracture or stress reaction. So
because I can imagine lots of recreational runners or even professional runners don't listen to their body as well as you do there, and they push themselves and think, oh, it's just, you get pain when you run, and I've just got to run through this. But you listen to your body and you go, no, this, I need to adapt here.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, is being able to listen to your body, and so I'm really very much against taking any sort of anti-inflammatories. I don't want to even take any anti-inflammatories because it inhibits that feedback system. And even during a race, I would not even want to take any pain meds because I want to know what my body's feeling and how to adjust things. So yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring up the anti-inflammatories, because the amount of people, and we'll get into Comrades here, that I knew, because when I lived in South Africa, that would purposely take anti-inflammatories to be able to try even compete at that level or just finish the event. And they didn't realize that, yes, when you take anti-inflammatories, it stresses your kidneys. And when you're already doing an endurance run, you're stressing your kidneys and the detrimental health effects. But like in your case here, you're saying from a health perspective too, it's a big no-no to be trying to do endurance running with taking anti-inflammatories.
Yeah. I mean, with the ultras, hydration, your hydration status is really kind of in flux, and so yeah, your kidneys, or who knows what's going on with your kidneys, but you definitely do not want to be taking anti-inflammatories.
Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting what you mentioned earlier too, so you had the stress fractures in your feet, and even as high as up in your femur, did you say? So this is your thigh bone.
Yeah. So what I came to the conclusion was, the orthotics they were helping my foot. They were changing the distribution of stress such that my feet weren't being the shock absorbers. And so the stress was going up the kinetic chain, and my femurs ended up being stressed more. And so I had 4 stress fractures in my femurs over like 2 years. So
yeah, that's an unusual place. I always think of runners for feet and for shins, not as typically as high as a femur, as a thigh bone.
Yeah, and one thing to mention, so I had my bone density checked many times during this period, and I actually have very good bone density. Like I've never missed my period. I've never had issues with eating disorders, and so it was like I did not fit the typical mode for someone to have the female athlete triad and be getting stress fractures. And so for me, I think it was more of an imbalance between my bones had grown so quickly that my muscles were pulling on my bones in unusual ways. And so your femur, I mean, you have your quad muscles and such, and so they're pulling on the bone. And so my body was imbalanced when I had all those stress fractures. And so I basically had to grow into my body so that my muscles caught up with my bones. And so it seemed to happen around like 22, 23 years of age. So.
That you were getting growing pains in your early 20s.
I finally grew into my body in my early 20s, and I could finally handle the proper training to develop myself. So
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the female triad there, because I think that's also where I think, from a health perspective, how do you manage your health being a female when you're doing that endurance event? And you brought up hormonal changes, like I guess it's quite common in at your level that females stop having periods too because of the training that you're doing to your body.
yeah. So I'm very fortunate that I grew up in a very wholesome. My mom's like a homemaker, and she's a very good chef, and so I grew up eating really really well, and eating steak and potatoes and ice cream, and I just grew up in a very wholesome. Eating a very wholesome diet, and so it wasn't until I got to college that I even got exposed to people eating weird and not eating, basically just salads and sandwiches and that sort of thing. And I was the girl on the team that was I was probably the thinnest person on the team, but I was the one eating the chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes. So I didn't understand why my teammates, or how they could even do the training of eating salads all the time, salads and sandwiches and soup and everything, and so I'm fortunate that they did not influence me to change how I ate, because I like food, I like to eat, and I think that that's been a key reason why I've been able to go on and keep running and go on to run ultras and be really good at that. So but yeah, I mean I eventually found out in grad school that my lifetime diet is higher in fat, and so that was they said that that was probably why I was able to, once I realized I could run longer and handle more mileage, and that was probably why I could, was because I had more fat in my diet. And so yeah, that was really interesting.
So, what do you think then of people who are going more low carb or even ketogenic for endurance athletes? So, be trying to become fat adapted or keto adapted to be able to do long distance running.
Yeah. So ironically, so my day job in osteoimmunology, we actually a couple of years ago we did a high fat diet study with mice, and so the thought, what we were trying to do is we were trying to put them on this high fat diet that was like 60% fat, and then the rest carbs or protein, and so we were doing this to try to induce osteoarthritis in their knee joints,
Okay, interesting.
because too much fat actually induces inflammation within the body, and so I'm the one that was doing all the imaging for these animals, and I was taking care of them and having to feed them and everything, and so I'm not quite sure that too much fat, like a really really high fat diet, is good, but I think that eating more fat than for in America to be considered heart healthy has to be under 30% fat. And I'm eating about 35% fat. And so I definitely think that, having a little bit more fat can, create changes within your body to be better at metabolizing fat. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what to think of, people that go on these really, really high fat diets that are extremely high fat. Because yeah, knowing what I know as a researcher and what it does to the knee joints and inflammation within the body, I'm just not quite sure about that.
Okay, because I'm sure, having been a Comrades winner now, that you would have met someone like Bruce Fordyce, and maybe, I don't know, if did you have a chance to even meet Professor Tim Noakes? Was he at the
No,
event?
no. I would love to meet him. Uh, yeah, as I've been telling people, my first running book was Lore of Running,
Okay.
by Timothy Noakes. And so I've been hearing about Comrades and Bruce Fordyce since I was in the seventh grade. so, so it was really cool for me to be able to hang out with Bruce. I can now say that I've partied with Bruce.
That must be such a great feeling. Yeah, it's like a person you look up to in the running world, and you actually get to meet them and chat with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, we spent quite a bit of time together, and so he's like me. He's able to compartmentalize, being able to focus on his training, but at the same time, be an easygoing, like normal person. And so, we definitely had a couple of beers and some wine and everything, and like he was a pretty cool guy.
Cool. So, can we get into maybe talking about bone health here?
Yeah,
To strengthen your bone, what would be your tips for someone? Like, how did you get your bones to be stronger? So
yeah.
you were talking about the barefoot and minimalist running, which to try and get yourself into that. So you were using your own body weights and running and exercise. Is that the best way?
Yeah, so our bones, we need to bear weight. And so my research going back to even my undergrad was related to strength training. And so we were working with a device that could be used during space flight to help astronauts maintain their bone mass. And so when astronauts go into space flight, they don't have that weight bearing stimulus to help maintain their bone and muscle health. And so we were working with a strength training device that relied on inertia that they could use during space flight to help strength train. And so, from all that, what I learned from that, is that, when I think of weight bearing, I think of walking or standing, just bearing weight. I think, not everybody can run and run like I do, but, most of us can walk, and if we can walk and their weight, that walking is a great activity. Even when I've had injuries, I've gone out, I've done long walks, like 2 hours of walking a day, when I couldn't run for a period of time. And so I think that walking is definitely a really good activity. But yeah, I think that definitely strength training is important, especially for women and what it does to you hormonally. And I talking about my undergrad research, what we found that is basically the heavier the load and the more blood lactate that you're producing from strength training, and that correlates to growth hormone release. And so I applying that with myself, I got into doing upper body strength training. And my thought was that if I used heavy weights with my upper body, that and I worked to fatigue and I produced that growth hormone release, that would help my lower body to recover faster, because the growth hormone release is systemic within your body, and so
Mm,
it's flowing throughout your body. And so when I started doing strength training, about 9 years ago, and doing it consistently, it was kind of an experiment for me, talking about the whole biohacker thing. So I was really intrigued. I thought I would do strength training for a period of time, and see how it impacted my running performance. And so what I found was, after twice a week heavy strength training, and usually I would do it like the day after a workout. And so after about 6 weeks, I started to see an improvement in my running performance.
interesting.
And and so I was really I thought, well, that's pretty cool, because you could basically time when you start a strength training regimen, according to when you're building up to peak race performance. And so I would go through periods where I would not strength train, for a couple months, and then I would have my peak marathon that I'm training for, and I would start my strength training about 2 months before. And so it was very consistent that after about 6 weeks of consistent strength training, I would see this jump in my running performance. And so yeah, even like training for Comrades this year, I started my strength training regimen at the beginning of April. And within about 2 weeks before Comrades, I did my one of my final workouts that I was doing. And so I finally knew that, like, 2 weeks before Comrades, I was definitely ready and I was fit. And so yeah, I definitely think that the strength, I had seen a jump in my strength training as well, as far as the amount of weight that I could use, and such. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. That is to think that as a runner, that you were training your upper body and it was healing, or it was improving your lower body because of of
Yes,
that human growth hormone factor traveling through your blood system and going down into your legs and healing you.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Isn't that cool?
that is very cool. And it's such a great tip for people too, is to think that when you're training your upper body, that's actually creating a full body an influence in a healthy way.
Yes, yes.
And
But yeah, but we're talking about bone though, and
yes,
growth hormone, these are we don't. The thing is, as an elite athlete, we don't need drugs. We don't need to take drugs. If we understand how our body works and how to upregulate our own hormones, that that's an endogenous stimulus so it was really cool for me as an undergrad understanding this and understanding how I could upregulate my own hormones to enhance recovery and enhance my own bone mass and so that was a cool thought for me thinking as an elite athlete that I could use my brain to enhance my running performance. So yeah.
and you did touch on with the NASA guys that with astronauts. So you used whole body vibration plates too, did you?
Yeah. So my grad school master's thesis project was vibrating a bunch of rats on a whole body vibration platform. So it was pretty cool. What we did was we suspended all these rats. I had 30 rats in a room that were suspended by their tails and so that was supposed to induce osteoporosis in their hind limbs, kind of like with astronauts or with people that are bedridden, people that have hip fractures. Someone has a hip fracture and they basically can't bear weight for a period of time. And so we were doing this experiment with these rats. And so I had all these rats that, they went through a period where they were unloaded, and then we put them down and we had one group that was just normal weight bearing. So it was like not vibrated. And then we had another group that was vibrated. And I had these boxes that strapped down onto the vibration platform. And I put all these rats in the boxes and they were vibrated for 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day. Now think about that. That they were getting was an extra 10 minutes of stimulus from this vibration platform. And so then I ended up doing all the analyses, all the lab work with their bones. And so what we found is that it did help to suppress the basically the bone. So you have bone formation and you have bone resorption. And so your bones are being built back up, they're being resorbed. And so what was interesting was my thesis found that they had less bone removal. And so that, if you have less bone removal, then you end up having more bone formation. And so it was a good stimulus. And so basically, you can think of whole body vibration as being almost like walking and standing. And so it's a very low level stimulus. And so thinking about that, with every day, like, I always, the vibration thing was really cool because they're now applying it in like PT clinics and, to try to help people that have hip fractures and that sort of thing, and, to get that added stimulus. But yeah, I mean, if you had to equate it to normal every day, I would just say it's like walking.
And did you find, because I think I know it's a whole big topic on its own, but just if the commercially available vibration platforms that do market, hey, look, this is good for your bone health, but there's different ways that they vibrate and there's different frequencies that they vibrate.
Yes.
Would you give a recommendation just generally, like what frequency people should look for, or what type of vibration they should look for if they're looking for a commercial plate?
Yeah. So the vibration platform that we had to calibrate it so that it was vibrating at what it was stated to vibrate at. But basically, it was like I think it was like 90 hertz. I think it was like 90 hertz. And so there's a lot of studies that have used vibration ranging from like maybe 30 hertz up to 90 hertz. And so ours had like I think that hopefully I'm stating this right. I haven't read my thesis in a
It was a while
while.
ago. Yeah, you've done a lot more since then.
But yeah, I remember that it was at like 90 hertz, and so that was considered high frequency.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, do I have that right?
Yeah, because 30 hertz, from what
Uh,
I understand, is usually what most plates run at. Well, the lower
yes.
range. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's at 30, but ours was at 90, and we did it for 10 minutes with
Mm.
the rats. And so we were, uh, but yeah, we found that it did have a positive benefit, and so it was really interesting thinking about that all it takes is like 10 minutes of a
Yeah.
stimulus, and so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so already as biohacking tips I'm listening here is, go do some good walking to improve your bone health, do some upper body
Yeah,
workouts. If you want a
yeah,
home body vibration platform is also going to be a beneficial effect for your bone health. And,
yeah,
and what
yeah,
about the calcium debate? People always go, "Oh, I take calcium, calcium, calcium to make my bones stronger." Do you have an opinion
yeah.
on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because around the time that I started getting more serious with my training, I thought I was lactose intolerant because I started having issues, GI issues with dairy. And so I cut out dairy. I still eat ice cream. I seem to be okay with ice cream, but milk, I cannot do milk. And so I basically had to switch, even like I drink coffee and having to switch, what kind of milk I put in my coffee. But basically I had cut back, like way back on my dairy consumption. And because I went to grad school, and so like I got bone density tests on myself. Like I probably have like 10 years worth of bone density tests on myself through all this period, and my bone mass went like way up.
So
And so,
sorry, just to get that, you cut out the dairy, but your bone mass still went
yes,
up.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I grew up on a very wholesome diet, drinking a glass of milk for like every meal. And so here I like completely cut out dairy, and my bone mass went up, and I was taking calcium supplements, and I was started running more, and and they joked that like I think it was right after I went to grad, or right after I was done with grad school, and I started working in a bone lab up at Purdue University, and they went and tested everybody in our lab because they were doing some sort of baseline testing with the machine. And so they were blinded basically on like whose data was whose, but they joked that they were able to know that which data was mine because I had like way better hip bone mass than anybody else. And so they're like, oh, well, we know that this is Camille's because she's got the best hip bone mass. And so obviously between not having dairy and then all the running that I do, it was having a benefit to my hip bone mass. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
Um, so I think hopefully, are there any other bone tips you would like to pass on to people before we move away from just going on about bone?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of what I learned about in grad school, as far as the nutrition and the female athlete triad, is it's all about being an energy balance. And so I have a lot of premenopausal women friends that don't have periods, or they struggle with their periods, and they're like, oh yeah, I eat really well, and I'm like, no, you probably don't, and so a lot of women won't get their period back until they stop running because and they think that it's just about too much energy expenditure. And the thing is, for me to be able to do what I do, I run a lot.
Mm.
I run 120, 130 miles per week, and I don't miss my period. And so I learned in grad school, I had my energy status, I had to like weigh my food in for a week, and they checked my energy balance, and I was within energy balance of something like 70 kilocalories, which was incredible for as much as I run. And so they said that was really, really good because it meant that I was so in tune with my body and, what it needed, that I was getting my energy intake was matching my energy expenditure. And so yeah, your energy balance is really, really critical to your hormonal balance to be able to get regular periods. And so you want to be maximizing your bone mass up until like the age of 30 to 35 as a woman, because after that, it's all downhill basically with your bone mass. And so, yeah, you just really have to be in tune with your energy intake if you're running a lot. So
Yeah, I think that's a great top tip for any female listeners to this who are keen runners too. If you are getting to the stage where you're noticing your menstrual cycle has changed, you're saying that's a warning sign that you're not in that good energy balance, and you need to address that. It's
exactly.
not normal.
Yeah, and for me as an elite athlete, that I want my hormones to be in balance. If
Mm.
something is if I was not getting my period, that would be a red flag that my body is not healthy. Like for me to perform like I do, my body has to be healthy, extremely healthy. And so, yeah, I'm so in tune with these signs that, whether my body gets a sharp pain, I might be getting a stress fracture. And, so I've got a whole community of healthcare people around me that are helping make sure that I'm healthy when I toe the line and nothing is off. So
Mm-hmm.
that's important.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
going into a little bit of nutrition here as a side thing, I recently got to speak with Professor Bruce Bean, and he is a co-inventor of a product called HOTSHOT, and you are an ambassador for HOTSHOT.
Yeah.
So tell me,
Yeah.
because I really want to know. So I found it fascinating when I was speaking with Bruce about the how muscles cramp, and for you at the level that you run at, I mean, I'm guessing cramp it must be a high risk factor for elite athletes at the ultramarathon level. And I'd love to know your experience of taking HOTSHOT. I mean, just that, because it is, I've taken it and it's hot and spicy. And I'd love to know, like, how do you handle that when you're running? And do you take in one shot? So if you could just talk a bit about that, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So I think I had first heard about HOTSHOT from my ultra marathon friends just over a year ago. And so I contacted the company to see if I could test it. And I was testing it at first in training, and I remember thinking, it feels like a hot Jägermeister shot. It was like a really spicy like shot, and I felt like a fire in my belly. And I was kind of like I was like, well, I'm not sure what I'm feeling in training and how I'm going to feel trying to take this in a race. But what I did, I went and did a 50 miler just over a year ago. And, being the biohacker that I am, I was like, I got to apply this in a real world situation. And so I carried it in my pack, and we had these like extended climbs up this mountain that we had to do. And so my quads started cramping, and this is like pretty early in the race. Like it was not very far into the race. It was like 10 to 20 miles into the race of a 50 miler. And my quads are cramping, and I'm like, well, the only way I'm going to find out is to take the hot shot and see what happens. And so within like a couple minutes, I could just feel this. It was almost like my muscles just started to relax, and everything just kind of like, I just felt this relaxation within my lower body. And I did not cramp at all after that. I was good to go.
That is great.
Yeah, and I thought I was totally sold on the product after that. So
Yeah, that's when you know when something works, when you feel like, oh, here we go. Oh, it says it should work, so let me try. Boom. Oh, actually it does. And I've just finished a 50 mile race.
Yeah. And because knowing what I know as a science person, I was like, I hope this is not some sort of placebo effect. But I'm telling you, my muscles really did feel like they relaxed, and definitely I had no problems whatsoever after that. So
Fantastic, yeah. And when I was speaking with Bruce, I didn't mention it to him, but it's and we'll come back to Professor Tim Noakes because he talks about the central governor theory, about how it is our nervous system that creates the cramping, and that's also what the HOTSHOT's about, is that you stimulate the nerves, and so if your nervous system's a bit fatigued, then it wakes it up. So it's fantastic to hear a real life example here at an elite level too. I want to get it. I want to also get a little bit into beer, if you don't mind. Can you tell us about your beer biohacking?
Yeah. So this is another one of those real world experiments. So I went and ran an ultra last fall, and I'm having like the race of my life. Like I caught the top male about 40 miles into the 100K, and
sorry, just so people hear that again, the female caught the top male.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I caught the top male, and yeah, it was about 48 miles into the 100K, and I caught the top male, and the top guy is actually a really good runner, and so he was shocked when I caught him. I was having an incredible race, and we had to climb up a hill. Right after an aid station, and I started feeling nauseated. I had taken some extra aid, and then had to climb up this hill, and I started feeling nauseated. And so I hit the next aid station after that, and I literally felt like I was gonna like pass out. Like I was not feeling good at all. And I sat down on a chair, and they're trying to give me, all these foods and fluids and everything, and I'm just like slumped over in the chair. And so my husband and I had bought a 6-pack of beer. We bought some Rogue Dead Guy Ale. And so he had it in the back of his car, and he's like, hey, do you want to have a beer?
As you do.
And I kind of perked up after that, and I thought, well, nothing else is working, why don't I drink a beer? And so he went, got it, and popped it open, and I literally chugged that thing in like 10 seconds. Like, like if I could definitely probably be a beer miler if I tried. And so I literally sprung back to life. Like I literally like jumped off the chair, and my husband couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe it. And I said, I think I'm feeling really good now. And so I took off running. And by that point, a couple of men had passed me, and so I was in 4th place. And we had to do another loop around for 4 miles, and I had caught the 3rd place guy, and he was really shocked because he was probably like 400 meters ahead of me, and I had drank this beer, and then I caught him and everything. And then I met my husband again, and I chugged another beer. And
wow, okay.
Yeah, so I was just craving beer after that, and I drank another beer, and I couldn't tolerate my gels at that point because I was just not feeling too great, but the beer was hitting the spot. And so I had another beer, and then I took off again, and I mean, I was running like a mad woman after that. And then I saw my husband again, probably with only a couple miles left to go, and I think I drank another maybe half another beer, and then drank some water and stuff, and then I kept going. Well, by the time I got to the finish line, I was feeling pretty woozy. I think I drank a little bit too much beer.
2.5 beers in a race.
Yes, I think my limit was like 2 beers. Like that's about as much as I could drink. But I tell you, it did something like as far as like my mental clarity. Like I had like more mental clarity after I had the beer, and it helped to settle my stomach, and it just like I felt like balanced after that. I'd gone from being nauseated and slumped over in the chair to like spring back to life, and like I just felt better after that. So whatever it did, I think it, beer is a vasodilator. And so I think that maybe what happened was all the blood had gone to my gut to digest whatever was in my gut. And so it wasn't going to my head. And so I was feeling like I was going to pass out, I was feeling nauseated. And so I think that because it's a vasodilator, I think it helped enhance the blood flow to my head so that I could mentally think again and keep going. So
Wow, that is incredible. Yeah, and this is alcoholic beer, not non-alcoholic beer.
this is strong beer. This is like 6.5% alcohol. So
Wow.
it was a good beer for sure.
Yeah, to think you're racing and you chug a bottle of beer and just boom,
Yeah.
and I feel fantastic, and off you go. So
Yeah.
have you done
Yeah.
it again? Have you experimented again?
Yeah. So so the kicker was I broke the course record by 27 minutes at this race where I chugged the beer. So I
So you went from slump to I don't feel great to breaking a record and drinking beers.
yes.
Okay.
So I drank. I thought, wow, that was pretty life changing. I mean, I've run marathons, where I've had a beer after the marathon, or I've been craving a beer, after a long run or something like that. And so, here we found out that like, oh, I can have a beer during the race, and it actually makes me feel better. And so now we've incorporated it. Well, first off, what was really cool was I, told my story on social media, and I ended up getting sponsorship with Rogue L. So the company that had saved me in my race, they wanted to sponsor me. So they ended up sending us all this beer and T-shirts and everything. And
So this is a
yeah,
local beer where you live, is it? Rogue L?
it's brewed in Oregon, so and I actually found Rogue L when we were over in New Zealand. So
Okay.
Rogue is international. I don't think it's in South Africa, and I'm not sure if it's in the UK, but it was in New Zealand. So yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so anyway, so now we've tried to incorporate like having a little bit of beer in any ultra that I do, and so I swear, like it's like a magic elixir. Like I'll probably take it like the last like 1/3 of an ultra, so maybe like the last like 15-20 miles of 100K.
Yeah.
And so every time I've done it, like I mean, I've just like smashed it like the last like bit.
Wow.
So
So how do
yeah,
you? I just had a thought. I mean, we're talking about a carbonated beer here too, so it's gassy, isn't it?
yeah. I
So,
don't know. I haven't really felt any effects from it being carbonated. Yeah, that's it. Because I know they try to like defizz Coke or that sort of thing,
yeah, I'm
but
just thinking when you're running and you just chug a big thing and people will go, belch and whatever. But just
yeah.
that feeling like you don't feel bloated when you run at that last bit then with the
No,
beer.
no. I mean, maybe it's because it's really high alcohol beer. I'm not sure. Like,
Okay.
it doesn't. I know. Like when they do like a beer mile and stuff, that they try to like pick like a beer that is like maybe well tolerated or something. I don't
Yeah.
know what the kind of. I like to drink dark, heavy beers, and so maybe I don't know. I don't seem to have any issues with the carbonation. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
so it doesn't feel too gassy, and you find it's still a one beer that you'll take in that last thing in the
Well,
last section, or have you experimented with how much beer you need to ingest
yeah,
now?
yeah. So my limit is 2 beers. Like I will not have more than 2 beers because I get too
Woozy.
woozy.
Yeah, but you'll
So
still do it. Well, you'll just down a bottle of beer at one of those drinking stations that your husband will pass you. Is it?
yeah. Or he'll put it like in one of my flasks. Like he'll like put it in a flask and I'll like run with the beer and just chug it or whatever.
Did you do that at Comrades Marathon?
I had 2 beers at Comrades.
I wonder if do you know of anyone else who drinks beer when they run marathons like you?
No, I'm not really sure as far as ultra runners. I mean, we found this out by accident, so we've kind
Yeah.
of. I think it's because nausea is such a like common thing with ultra runners that I've basically found my cure for nausea, and so it and plus it's kind of a nice treat. I like to drink beer, so it's kind of something to look forward to at a race. So yeah, we've tried to incorporate it into all my races now. So
Wow. So you've hacked performance by taking some beer, which has made you run faster, be able to do that. Plus,
Yeah.
it's fixed the nausea side effect of running long distance for you.
Yeah. Another cool thing to mention is ginger beer. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you ever had ginger beer, but I had it when I was in New Zealand at this trail race in New Zealand, and they had it at one of the aid stations. And it was probably like halfway into the race, I chugged some ginger beer, and that was so good. Oh my gosh, between the regular beer and the ginger beer, like those are like my two most favorite things to have now, like, and to treat like any nausea or blood sugar or anything. So yeah, I actually had some ginger beer as well at Comrades and the last part. So
Okay, maybe that's a little bit like on the HOTSHOT mechanism with the stimulation, like the shock effect, I'm guessing,
yeah,
potentially.
yeah, I think ginger is like a natural cure for your
Nausea
stomach.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay. So this is,
yeah.
yeah, I love that tip. So any long distance runners, you maybe experiment with having a bit of beer when you're feeling a bit nauseous or you need that extra boost in the second half of the race.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, trade the Coca-Cola for ginger beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've talked about some of your nutrition hacks that you do. I'd love to, if we can, touch a little bit on your recovery aspect, because in this world of
Yeah.
sports science, a lot of people focus on how to train well, but a big part of being able to be an elite athlete like yourself is knowing how to recover well. So if you could
Yeah,
explain some
for
of
sure.
your processes in how you make sure your body recovers from training.
Yeah. So one thing I learned I think it was maybe just after grad school was so I run twice a day every day unless I'm too tired to run twice a day.
So you still run twice a day, 7 days a week, then?
Yes.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so what I learned, I was in a seminar one time, and some bone professors from another university where they had done some studies where they were looking at stimulating bone with a single bout versus dividing it up into two bouts and looking at the time so many hours after they would do the stimulus, and then they would wait so many hours to do the stimulus again. And so what they found was that it was more anabolic to do it as two bouts than to do it as one bout. And they found that the ideal amount between the two bouts was to have 4 to 6 hours between the two bouts. And so, thinking about that with running, it's better to run twice a day than it is to run a single bout for that same duration. So say you had like 2 hours of training, it would be better to run it as like 1 hour and another hour than to run a single 2 hour run. And then ideally you want to have 4 to 6 hours between those running sessions to get the most anabolic benefit. And so, I had gotten into running twice a day around this time, and I found that I felt better. I felt better running twice a day than I did just running once a day. And so I've kept that up as part of my routine all these years, is to run twice a day. And so yeah, that's definitely one recovery tip. I even run twice the day before a race. And so I end up doing two short runs twice a day. And so that's like part of my routine, to keep my body's used to running twice a day, and it helps with blood flow, and it helps to, keep my body feeling loose and limber. And so yeah,
Well,
that's
that's
really helpful.
fascinating because we're getting into the world and the concept of overtraining, and so you're not overtraining.
No. So rather than doing, one single large bout, you're doing two shorter bouts,
Mm-hmm.
basically moving twice a day. And, obviously not everybody's an elite athlete. Not everybody could go run, twice a day. But, even if you just ran once a day and like went for like a walk or something, or, strength trainer, or just moving, your body likes to move frequently. basically. And so yeah, that's helpful.
And I'm even thinking of weekend warriors and people who want to run a half marathon for the first time in their lives, or a marathon. Yeah, these are some great tips too, to say break up your training schedule so that
Yeah,
you don't overtrain by hitting your body too hard. Rather do a little bit, give yourself that day when you
every
work,
day.
and then do a little bit at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, I have a lot of friends that are recreational runners and, they might only be running 3 days a week. But their runs are like really, really long, like, maybe 10 miles, twice a week. And then they go and do a 20 miler on the weekend. And I've tried to tell people that you would be better off running, 5 days a week instead of just 3 days a week, because your body likes to be in a routine and it likes to move, and it's stressful to the body, to go throw 20 miles at yourself if you're only running 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, like, I think it's better. Your body likes to move, and so you got to like think about breaking it up more and doing it over more days and such. So yeah.
Okay. And so, since we're talking about training here, and I remember the marathon runners that I came across all the time, there were so many different training protocols and regimes out there. With your husband being a coach and with you being an elite, do you have your own training system that people can get hold of, that you recommend, or you recommend some sort of protocol for people who want to be able to finish a Comrades Marathon?
Yeah, we definitely, we've gotten a lot of inquiries about like how I train and that sort of thing. And I pretty much operate off a 2 week system of over a 2 week period. I do short intervals, long intervals, a hill session, and then a heart rate progression run. And so I have like four main workouts that I do during a 2 week period. And then all the other days in between those hard workouts are just easy running. And so when I say easy, I'm running at under 70% of max heart rate effort. And so, I take my easy days easy and my hard days are hard, like really, really hard. And so I think that, having that sort of balance with my training has been really helpful to keeping me healthy long term, and being able to develop from my training. So yeah, so we definitely get a lot of I think my husband, I should mention that he's my coach, and
Yeah.
he's also, we own a massage table, and so he gives me regular massages, and so that's definitely been helpful to my recovery, is just be able to get regular massages from him. And then also I have these compression boots that basically fill up with air, and they're kind of like, they have graduated compression where they're deflating and inflating, and it's kind of like getting a massage. And so yeah, I usually put those on after hard workouts, and so those definitely seem to help my recovery as well.
Okay. Wow. So, gosh, there's I can imagine your manual and your protocols that you've tested and played with, and what you're doing. But a good premise I'm already getting here is that you got to train regularly, but not too hard, just to condition your body, just like you did with your barefoot running, where you helped heal your stress fractures, where
Yes.
you. So I love that story too, because it sort of seems counterintuitive to a lot of people, thinking, no, but if I go barefoot running, or if I use minimalist shoes, that I'm actually going to hurt my body more, and I'm trying to avoid that, so I wear more cushioned shoes in that case. But you want to just do a little bit just to help your body grow, and then there's a tipping point where it's actually strong enough to support itself again.
Exactly. Yep. It's like strength training for your feet.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, unfortunately, we're close to that hour mark now. But I mean, there's so many cool biohacks that I could just try pull out of you to try help people. We haven't even got into. There's some other ones I want to talk about with sleep, and
Yeah,
some
sweet.
and other recovery mechanisms that you use, and even things that you would tell people to avoid. Camille, is it okay if maybe I get you on for another episode just to help with
Yeah,
people?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we could do that.
I
Yeah.
definitely want to do that, because I think we could help a lot of people, even I have a passion too for endurance runners, because I could see the confusion that so many people had when I was in South Africa. Is, what do I do? How do I do this? And then so many of them hurt themselves before they get to the event, and then they're so despondent, thinking, I'm 1 month away from this event that I've wanted to do all my life, and now I've hurt myself and I'm depressed, and will I be able to do it? And I think you could share so many good tips to prevent people from overtraining or hurting themselves, because I think a lot of people do that, where they've gone out too hard and they've hurt themselves, and then they can't do the event of their life or win it like you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even I had a serious injury leading up to Comrades, and it took a whole medical team around me trying to make sure that I was healthy, or at least healthy enough when I started the race to be able to push myself like I did. But yeah, I mean, it takes a whole entire team, and being so in tune with my body and what I'm feeling, and just trying to be, the health is almost more important than the training. And so that was really critical for me being able to win Comrades. So yeah.
And just if no one understands Comrades, how far is that to that race?
Yeah, so it's around 87 kilometers, which is about 55 miles.
Okay. Yeah. And what time did you finish that in?
Well, 6:27. It probably could have been a little bit quicker, but we had a bit of a mishap at the finish line, and so I ran probably about a minute slower than I was anticipating, but that's okay.
Oh well, you still crossed the finish line first, so.
I did. I know, it was really cool. It was very cool.
So Camille, how can people keep in touch with you, follow your progress, listen to your biohacks, your advice?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty active on social media, and so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and yeah, and they can probably contact me through either those through social media or through my website. So yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm very personable, and I like to interact with people. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Fantastic. And I'm going to link to all of these links in the show notes too. So I'll link to your Twitter account and your Instagram and everything, so people can find you that way.
Great.
So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today, and I'm definitely going to get you back on for another episode, because we could talk for a few more hours just about other cool biohacks.
I know. My brain's filled with all kinds of ideas, that things I've done over the years. So it's been fun to develop myself, from being this injury riddled runner to winning Comrades. So I love how you can apply the knowledge is power concept. And so yeah, it's been really cool what I've been able to do with myself. So
fantastic. And and all the best of luck for your future races.
Thank you. Yep, I'll enjoy following your website as well. So thank you.
Thanks.